Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of GenAI Vlog. So I'm super pumped to be able to check out this new model, Quent 32 billion preview that's just being released on Hugging Face. So this is yet another fancy model coming out, and it's still at the experimental stage. That's released by the Quent team from a Chinese company, Alibaba. So very excited to be here. And there are a couple of things I interacted with this model on Hugging Face. I found it's a little bit of inconvenient. Like for example, here, if I type in tell me a joke, sometimes it doesn't work. For example, here I got an error. Now, of course, no one to blame. It could be the internet, it could be the server, right? In this case, it's probably the server. That's okay, right? That's okay. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about how to interact with this model from Python, right? From programmatic access. So, with that being said, let's get started. So let's go to our collab. This is in my current environment collab. What we're gonna do is we're gonna first of all get our API key. And in that case, I'm gonna use my Hugging Face token. So just like that. In this example, I'm using Google Colab secrets from user data to manage my secrets. So I'm gonna say grant access, boom, just like that. Now I'm gonna get the code in here and throw in a couple of questions. For example, I'm gonna say, what is the capital of China? And this model, I'm pointing the endpoint to Quent 32 billion preview. So give me something back, right? The role is assistant. That means it's the response from a chatbot. The content here is the response. Let's see. I need to know the capital of China. China is a big country, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So well, this API is working, the key is working, so we're in good shape. Now, let's do a little bit of fun things around this API, right? So we know this API endpoint is working. Let's do a little bit of fun things. So first things first, I typically like to wrap it in a class object. So what that means, it's the following, right? Here, I'm defining a class object. I'm initializing with two things, right? At least two things. First of all, it's a client. So that means API key. Great. Second, what I typically do is the history. So the reason I do that is because if you look at the message body, it's a array of dictionary object. And this dictionary object pretty much gives us the event stream of the entire conversation history. In this case, users asking a question, that's the content of the question. You want to capture that, right? And this is an array means that it can append it indefinitely. So that's what we're doing here. We have a method called append history, of which we append the dictionary object, depending on what role that the response is. And then we invoke the API. Invoke the API means there's a client here that points to a particular endpoint, and the endpoint here I'm pointing to the model, and the model, of course, can be defined by the user. So that's the input argument here in this method. Last but not least, I want to get the history out so that I can print it, I can see it, right? I can examine it, so on and so forth. So I'm going to run that. Now that this class object is defined, then I can start doing a couple of fun things, right? I can then define a chatbot, invoke with it, but I'm going to do it in a conversational setup by using a while loop. So just like that, I have my while loop. This is the Hugging Face token, so I'm going to set HF token. Once that's set, I have my chatbot, that's my model endpoint, and I'm wrapping everything in a while loop, right? So if I start this while loop, it's going to give me a conversational environment, and I can pretty much interact with it, right? So I'm going to run it in front of you and say, tell me a joke. And then it's going to say, why did the mathematician name his dog Koji? Because he left a residual at every pole. Great. And then I can say something else. What is 1 plus 1? Hey, 1 plus 1 equals to 2. This is a fundamental concept, blah, blah, blah. I can probably tell it to code for me, right? So write a hello world Python function. And then it's probably going to think about a little bit and then give me a Python function, things like that. Hello world, great, Python function. And then I can probably do a little bit of a complicated formula, right? I can say write a Python function to create a Fibonacci number. Let's see how that works. So it's a still a Python function, but maybe a little bit more complicated. And boom, there you go. That's the function. Now let's try a different language, right? Write a SQL query to find data where the column name contains John. and limit to 10. So you should say something like select something from something where the column name contains John. So there it is. That's the SQL code, so on and so forth. So you get the idea, right? Now, if you want to exit, you can just say exit as I define here. Then type in exit. Boom, there you go. So you're good to go. Now that we finished this conversation, what happens if I want to take a look at the entire history? Not to worry, we have this method here, right? So if I run it, it will print me all of the history of the conversation. So now this is the user data that you can collect. You can train a model, you can fine tune it, you can then reiterate on what's going on. You can even learn the user journey, right? What exactly is the question on your platform that users are interested in asking, right? This event stream give you that content. Awesome. So now we have the setup. That's great, right? This sets a stage to get us into the next step. Thank you for watching. Next episode, we're going to come back. We're going to see how to wrap this in a small UI. I'll see you in the next episode.